I spilled coffee on a stranger's suit. Only later did I learn he owned the hospital and half of New York. The cup slipped from my hand in the chaos of the night shift, alarms blaring, rain hammering the ambulance bay glass, and a gunshot victim barely clinging to life. I turned and collided with a wall of tailored charcoal and heat. The scalding liquid splashed across his chest. He didn't flinch, just looked down at me, dark eyes sharp as if they could slice through excuses. "You're trembling," he murmured, voice low enough to drown out the storm. I meant to apologize. Instead, my breath hitched. Something in that moment, the sirens, the blood, his impossible calm, felt like the beginning of something I'd regret forever. I didn't know his name then, but I remembered his eyes, because later, I'd see them again in my son. It was supposed to be just another emergency shift, 12 hours of broken bones, heart attacks, and sleepless faces. But that night, the storm flooded half the city, and the ER turned into a war zone. I'd been patching up a teenager when the lockdown alarm sounded. Someone had been shot in the parking garage. Security sealed every exit. Then they brought him in. The stranger. Bleeding, silent, surrounded by men who looked more like soldiers than friends. His suit jacket was ruined, white shirt blooming red. He caught my wrist before I could speak. "Don't call the police," he said, not a plea, an order. Even under the fluorescent lights, he didn't look afraid. Just contained. Like a man who'd learned long ago that fear was useless. I should have walked away. Nurses weren't supposed to question names, only stabilize and move on. But I couldn't shake the weight of his stare, or the quiet way he said thank you when I stitched his side. When the lockdown lifted, he was gone. No name, no chart, no trace. For weeks, I told myself it didn't matter. That people like him lived in a different world, one that chewed up girls like me and didn't remember our faces. But 2 months later, when the test came back positive, I knew memory wouldn't be the problem. The test line turned pink while the radiator hissed like a serpent. I sat on the edge of my bathtub, scrub still damp from rain, and watched the color deepen as if it were tattooing itself into my future. I'd always imagined I'd make this decision with a partner's hand in mine, a plan on the fridge, a name picked from a list. Instead, there was a cracked mirror, city sirens, and the memory of a man whose name I didn't know. I called the clinic, then hung up. I dialed again, then listened to the recorded options blur together. The truth was simple, terrifying but simple. I wanted this baby. That one felt like a small, stubborn lighthouse in a storm. So I made the first decision. I kept him. The second, I told no one who his father was. I changed apartments, 4 flights up and a walk-up that smelled like old oranges and dust. I added blackout curtains. I traded day shifts for nights, where faces were brief and questions briefer. On the birth certificate, the line for father remained a white winter field. 2 months after my son was born, a headline appeared on the hospital internet. Moretti Global Foundation announces strategic partnership with St. Gabriel Medical. The photo showed him, my stranger, polished, impenetrable, hand in his pocket, the other on a podium. Dante Moretti, CEO. Something cold slipped between my ribs. Mafia whispers came with the name like a draft under a locked door. I could quit. Hide. But insurance meant vaccines, and the NICU discount meant formula that didn't run out. I chose a third thing. I stayed, quiet, careful, unseen. I told myself the city was big enough to keep us apart. I told myself lies that sounded like prayers. 2 years passed before I saw him again. The hospital had been buzzing for weeks about the merger ceremony, executives touring every floor, photographers flashing near the pediatric wing. I kept my head down, clipboard up, mask on. Just one more shift, I told myself. I'd slip through unnoticed like always. But fate doesn't knock. It kicks the door in. It happened on a Tuesday morning, the kind that smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. I was checking vitals in the neonatal unit when the elevator doors opened and a security detail swept in, black suits cutting through pale walls. Then him. Dante Moretti didn't look like a man who belonged in daylight. He moved through it like he owned it, dark suit tailored within an inch of sin, expression carved from restraint. I froze, pen hovering midair, as his gaze swept the room. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd imagined it. Those eyes, that impossible calm. But then his attention landed on me. And stayed. Elena Cruz, the administrator, chirped beside him. One of our best nurses. My name in his mouth would have been too much. But hearing it from someone else still made my pulse stutter. His nod was polite, distant. Professional. And then, from the corner of the nursery window, my son, our son, pressed his palm to the glass of the daycare next door. Same dark eyes. Same tilt of the mouth. Dante followed my gaze. Stilled. The air left the room. I wanted to move, speak, run, anything, but his voice found me first, barely audible. How old is he? I lied. 2. His jaw flexed. He looks like me. And in that instant, every wall I'd built trembled. I didn't breathe until he left the room. The door closed behind him, and I sagged against the counter, fingers gripping cold metal. My pulse refused to slow. The other nurses chattered about his donation, his charm, the way his security detail looked like movie extras. I barely heard them. All I could see was the flicker of recognition in his eyes, the kind that could burn down a life. That evening, the corridors were quiet except for the hum of vending machines and the whisper of 4 pumps. I tried to convince myself that I'd imagined it. That Dante Moretti, billionaire, philanthropist, rumored crime lord, had 100 reasons to stare at a nurse, and not one of them involved memory. But as I clocked out, a black car idled by the staff exit. Its window lowered just enough to reveal those same eyes, now shadowed and certain. Get in, he said softly. Not an order, not quite. A request dressed like one. I can't, I whispered. Elena. My name, this time from his mouth. Quiet thunder. Please. Against every instinct, I opened the door. Inside, the air smelled like leather and rain. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. You disappeared, he said finally. No last name, no address. I searched. You shouldn't have. And yet. His gaze flicked toward the photo clipped to my ID badge. My son's smile, careless proof. He's mine. The words were a statement, not a question. Silence filled the car, thick and fragile. I wanted to deny it, to protect what little piece I'd built, but the truth hung between us, small and alive. When the light from a passing ambulance washed over his face, I saw something I hadn't before. Not power, not danger. Fear. Come home with me, he said quietly. We need to talk. Home. The word should have sounded like safety. Instead, it landed like a warning. I can't, I said. You don't understand. Then explain it. His tone was low, contained, but something volatile lived beneath it. Because right now, all I understand is that you had my son and vanished. The city blurred past the window, neon streaks and rain-soaked ghosts. Every heartbeat pounded in my throat. I reached for the door handle, but it clicked locked before my fingers touched chrome. Dante didn't look at me when he spoke next. People will come for him, Elena. For you. You think I'm the danger, but I'm the only thing standing between you and the world that wants leverage. I froze. His voice was calm, but the truth in it was a cold blade against my spine. He turned his head just enough for me to catch the flicker of something raw behind his control. You don't have to trust me, he said. Just don't run. The car slowed. Outside the tinted glass, black gates loomed open, waiting. And for the first time, I realized I might not be going home at all. The gates closed behind us with a whisper too smooth to be human. I'd seen the Moretti estate before, in glossy charity spreads and drone shots that made it look mythic. Nothing prepared me for the cold. Not temperature, silence. No neighbors. No traffic. Only rain slipping down the stone lions and the count of my own pulse. Dante took me through a hall of dark wood and old portraits. Smoke and cedar lived in the walls. He gestured toward the fire. Sit. I shouldn't be here, I said, already lowering onto velvet that held shape like memory. He leaned against the mantel, watching me the way a man watches a fuse. You kept him safe, he said. That matters. The flames licked higher, gold shards in his eyes. Then, all at once, the lights died. The house exhaled into black, the fire shrinking to a red eye. A single word left his mouth, soft and lethal.
Down.
I slid to the floor before I even thought about it. Somewhere, metal whispered free of leather. Not a phone. A gun. The generator coughed. Failed. Tried again. Rain pressed its face to the windows. We were not alone in the dark. The fire ticked and hissed. I could hear the house now, the long spine of it settling, the gutters gulping rain, the distance-measured footfalls of men moving like shadows with instructions. A hand found my shoulder. Warm, steady. Floor, Dante murmured, like a promise. His other hand stayed invisible, but the air around it felt heavier. Power grids on a private line, he said, voice threaded low. If it's out, someone made it out. Someone followed us? My whisper tasted like copper. Someone tried. A humorless curl lifted his mouth. We'll see if they were brave enough to come past the gates. A line of light cut under the door, then vanished. The smell of wet wool drifted in, the scent of coats steaming near an entry, mineral and damp. Stay low, he added. If I say move, you move. He didn't bark.
He promised.
I made a decision that felt like betrayal and survival in the same breath. I slid my phone free, thumb over 911. Then I locked it. If police came here and saw him, the story wouldn't belong to me anymore. Or to Noah. Footsteps halted beyond the threshold. A knuckle tapped twice. Another voice, velvet over gravel. Boss. Dante's reply was minimal.
In.
The generator finally roared awake. Lights flooded the room. In the sudden glare, the door opened on two men and a woman, dark suits, rain jeweled on shoulders, eyes alert. Not intruders.
His people.
But something else was in the room too, set gently on the marble like a gift. A small black envelope sealed with red wax, pressed with a coiled serpent. No one moved. He didn't touch the envelope. He studied it the way a surgeon studies a shadow on an X-ray. The woman set a cloth on the table and lifted the envelope with gloved fingers, as if even paper could be poisonous. Found at the gate controls, the velvet-voiced man said. Up close, he was cut from the same marble as Dante but with a crook to his grin. Cousin brother, something like blood. Camera looped for 11 seconds. Whoever did it knew our rhythm. The woman cracked the wax, eased out a single card. Matte black. No words. On the back, a symbol in white ink. 3 diagonal slashes, like a cat that hated you in another life. Dante's jaw tightened. Serrano. I'd heard the name spoken like a weather warning in the low, inevitable, bad. What does it mean? I asked. Means they want me to know they were here, he said. And to wonder what else they touched. The woman nodded once at me in a gesture that felt almost kind. Lydia, she said. House. Her eyes softened by a degree. Would you like tea? It was absurd, and somehow it steadied me.
Yes.
Please. Dante holstered the weight I couldn't see. When he turned back, control had slid over him like a second suit. Matteo, he said to the velvet voice, double perimeter. Audit the grid. No one in or out unless I say. Matteo's grin sharpened. On it. I should have been running. Instead, I wrapped my hands around a mug that smelled like bergamot and warmth and pretended my life wasn't being sorted into columns, before and after. He looked at my hands. Elena, he said, quieter. His name. My throat worked.
Noah.
Something unguarded flickered across his face. There and gone, like a window catching light. Where is he now? At a licensed daycare near the hospital. I lifted my chin. No one there knows about you.
They don't have to, he said.
To see his eyes. The card lay between us like a promise of trouble. I realized then that coming here had already changed the shape of our next hour. We moved to a smaller room that pretended to be casual. Books, a chessboard mid-game, rain running a soft finger down the panes. Lydia disappeared and returned with a battered tin of shortbread that looked stolen from someone's gentler kitchen. Dante stood, Not sitting until I did, a courtesy with armor over it. I want to see him, he said. Not a demand. A need that had learned to dress itself. You'll see him when I decide it's safe, I answered. My voice surprised me, steady, the way it got when a mother in triage needed calm more than she needed the whole truth. He was very still. You're angry. I'm protective. I matched his stillness. Those two things looked the same from far away. A muscle in his cheek eased. I can protect him. You can endanger him by existing, I said, and hated how it landed, true and cruel. So, here are my conditions if you're going to be in his life. No guns where he sleeps or plays. No lies to me about risk. No cameras. And you don't touch me without asking. For a heartbeat, the room was only rain, and the clock's patient throat clearing. Then he nodded once, clean, no negotiation. Agreed. It should have helped.
It did.
And yet the distance between us felt suddenly textured, like the air had something woven into it I hadn't seen. May I see a photo? He asked softer. I hesitated, then unlocked my phone and slid it across the table. Noah with yogurt on his nose. Noah in rain boots too big for him. Noah asleep, one hand open like he'd been holding something that flew away. Dante looked like a man who had forgotten how to breathe without noise. He didn't touch the screen. He didn't need to. You stitched me, he said after a moment, eyes still on Noah. That night. I did. Is the scar ugly? It's honest. I heard the answer and nearly smiled. If it pulls sometimes, you need to stretch the fascia. He unbuttoned his jacket, his shirt, like offering proof rather than seduction. A pale line curved along his ribs, a memory under skin. I stood, crossed the room before I could choose not to, and pressed my fingers lightly around the old wound, not touching the scar, touching what lived near it. Warmth. Strength. Breathe in, I said, and he did.
Out.
The facial tug eased under my hands. The fire gave a small sigh. He looked at my mouth and then away, as if he'd made a promise to my rules and planned to keep it.
Thank you, he said.
I stepped back. The space we left between us felt like a decision. My phone buzzed. A text from the hospital administrator. Media sniffing around NICU donation story. Any comment if asked about Moretti family values? The words held teeth. Another buzz, my building super. Men in suits waiting in lobby. Say they're from utilities. Want access to 4B. A photo followed. 2 men, wrong shoes for maintenance, wrong eyes for kindness. I have to get Noah, I said, already on my feet. Yes, Dante answered, already moving. We do. I go alone, I shot back. His glance contained thunder and restraint. You won't make it 2 blocks without someone making a picture of a story they don't understand. My name is a magnet. I can handle. You shouldn't have to. His voice didn't rise. It deepened. Let me take the heat. That's what my name is for. It was such a strange idea, power as a shield, not a weapon, that I faltered. He saw it and softened by a fraction. 48 hours, he said. You and Noah stay where I say, until I can find where this leak starts and end it. You keep your conditions. I keep you safe. After that, if you still want distance, I'll give it. 48 hours. I thought of daycare cubbies with tiny shoes. Of my apartment, small and honest, with a plant I kept forgetting to water. Of men in wrong shoes and envelopes with snakes. I made my decision. 48 hours, I echoed. And I drive to the daycare. If he sees strangers, he cries. Dante inclined his head, as if I'd made a chess move he respected. Matteo, he called, and the cousin appeared like a rumor come to life. 2 cars, front and rear. Low profile. No one gets out unless Elena says. Matteo tipped 2 fingers off his brow. Boss. We left through a service exit that smelled like lemon oil and rain. In the car, city lights slicked the streets into ribbons. Tires hummed like bees. My hands were steady on the wheel until they weren't. He saw it and adjusted the dashboard vent toward me without comment. How did the Serranos start with you? I asked, voice sandpapered. I said no to a partnership, he said. In my world, a no is personal. What partnership? He looked out at the rain. The kind that would have made your hospital money look like pocket change. The kind my father would have said yes to. And you didn't. I had reasons. His reflection in the glass looked like a man haunted by the ghost of his own choices. One of them is buckled in a car seat I haven't seen yet. Traffic bunched near Midtown, a red snake of brake lights. As we idled, billboards flickered overhead. One of them flashed a feed from a gossip site. Who is Dante Moretti's mystery nurse? The photo was a grainy, stolen moment from a hallway, me, mask off, eyes up. Heat crawled my neck. They're fast. They're hungry, he said. Let me feed them what I choose.
How?
By giving them a different story to chew. He pulled out his phone, made a call that sounded like money changing temperature. Double the pediatric grant, he told someone, voice in CEO register now. But tie it to citywide vaccination clinics in my mother's name. He hung up, gaze cutting to me. They'll write about that for a day. Maybe two. It doesn't fix the men in my lobby. No, he agreed. That's why we're not going there. We took a left instead of a right. East, toward the river.
Toward Noah.
The wipers kept time. The city smelled like wet metal and warm pretzels and the electric bite of a storm choosing who to strike. We turned onto the block that held Noah's daycare, a brick building with cheerful decals on the windows and a bell that chimed like a toy. Only tonight, the street was crowded with blue strobes and red taillights, umbrellas tilted like shields. Two police cruisers idled at odd angles. Parents clustered in tight circles, faces pale in the wash of emergency lights. My heart tried to climb out of my throat. I pulled to the curb before the cones, killed the engine, and was out in the rain in a breath. Elena, Dante's hand hovered, then fell back when I ran. He matched my pace a step behind, security fanning but keeping distance like I demanded. A teacher I knew, Ms. Rivera, lavender cardigan soaked dark, caught my arms. Everyone's fine, she said fast, eyes too wide to be convincing. We had a security alert. We're following protocol. My son, I said. Noah Cruz. She swallowed. All children are with staff in the back. Phones off. She glanced over my shoulder, at Dante, and her voice lowered. There was a man who asked for Noah by name. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A text arrived instead. A photo of Noah, taken through glass, time-stamped 2 minutes ago. He was looking up, eyes wide, hand pressed to the window. The message beneath it was 6 words.
Cute eyes.
He looks like him. The rain tasted like metal. The photo blurred as the rain hit my screen, smearing the edges of my son's face until all that remained were his eyes. Dark, wide, terrified. Where is he? My voice cracked the air. Ms. Rivera looked past me, toward the hallway behind the police tape. Inside. They moved the kids to the back room when the man asked for him. He said he was family. Family. The word stung. Dante was already moving. His people fanned out without a sound, splitting across the sidewalk like smoke. He didn't need to give orders. They knew the language of his shoulders, the direction of his eyes. Stay here, he said. No, I said, following him anyway. The officer at the door blocked our path. Ma'am, we're handling this. He's my son, I snapped. Elena Cruz. Check the roster. The officer hesitated, glancing toward Dante. Recognition flickered. Moretti meant power, even in a precinct badge. The door opened. Inside, the daycare was chaos wrapped in silence. Crayon drawings fluttered on the walls. A single overturned chair lay near the play mat. My chest tightened. Every breath scraped like gravel.
Noah.
A muffled cry came from the back, faint, almost swallowed by the hum of the emergency lights. Dante heard it too. He reached the inner door first, pushed it open, and froze. A woman stood there, mid-30s, raincoat dripping, her hand on my son's shoulder. Noah looked up, confused but calm, holding his stuffed bear against his chest. Mrs. Cruz, the woman said carefully. I'm with Child Protective Services. We got an anonymous tip, concerns about the child's welfare. Something about unsafe guardianship. Dante's voice was quiet, but it held a darkness that made the fluorescent lights flicker. Who called it in? She blinked, unsettled by the question. The system logs are sealed. Standard procedure. Not for me, he said. I stepped forward, gathering Noah into my arms. His little fingers dug into my coat, damp and trembling. He's fine, I whispered into his hair. He's okay. The social worker's gaze darted between Dante and me. Mr. Moretti, she said finally, recognizing him. You can't interfere in a state investigation. He smiled then, the kind of smile that belonged in boardrooms and war zones alike. I'm not interfering. I'm clarifying. My legal team funds most of the city's child welfare reform programs. Would you like to discuss this at your office, or here, in front of a dozen cameras? Her face went pale. There's no need for that. She retreated toward the hall. Just doing my job. When she was gone, Dante exhaled through his nose. Controlled, but sharp. That wasn't a coincidence. No, I said. It was bait. Noah's head rested on my shoulder, his small body warm and solid against the tremor in mine. His breath came out in sleepy huffs. He didn't understand the storm he'd just survived. I envied him that. We stepped back into the rain. Matteo was already at the car, phone pressed to his ear, rain streaking down the side of his jaw like mercury. The Serranos planted the call, he said. Anonymous tip traced to a burner near the docks. Dante nodded once, decisive. Get the rest of the route cleared. No stops.
He turned to me.
You're both coming to my estate. Tonight. I shook my head. I can't hide in your world, Dante. That's what started all this. He looked at me, eyes dark with something between fury and fear. You think I'm asking? I'm keeping you alive. The argument dissolved under the wail of approaching sirens. He opened the rear door himself, motioned for me to climb in. Noah was half asleep in my arms, his lashes stuck together, his little hand still gripping my collar. I slid into the seat, the smell of leather and rain mixing with a faint scent of Noah's shampoo, apple, and innocence. Dante sat across from me, not beside me, as if distance were the only thing keeping him from breaking his own rules. You did well, he said quietly. I froze. You moved when it mattered. That's what counts. The car rolled forward. The rain outside turned from drizzle to downpour, the city melting into blurred streaks of light. I watched them slide down the glass, feeling something shift inside me, like a fault line deciding whether to break or hold. Noah stirred, murmured something incoherent, and Dante's gaze softened. He didn't touch him, he'd promised, but there was something in his expression that felt like a silent vow. I spoke first. What will they do next? They'll escalate. Serrano doesn't play for attention. He plays for leverage. He knows about Noah now. So he'll come for him.
He'll come for you, Dante said.
You're the leverage. Noah is just the knife. His words chilled me, but there was no lie in them. By the time we reached the estate, Noah was asleep. Dante carried him inside, not touching me, not asking, but I didn't stop him. Watching him hold our son was like watching a storm cradle a candle, terrifying, but tender in ways I didn't understand. He laid Noah gently on a bed far too large for him, one arm tucked beneath the pillow, one tiny hand still curled. Then he turned to me. You need to rest, he said. My people will keep the perimeter. You'll be safe here. I don't trust safe anymore. He hesitated, then said something so soft it barely reached me. Neither do I. I lingered at the doorway, torn between gratitude and disbelief. The man I once stitched up under emergency lights was now the one standing guard outside my child's room. When I finally lay down on the edge of the bed, the rain still falling outside, I realized how long it had been since I'd let myself close my eyes without fear. I must have dozed, because the next sound I heard was the echo of footsteps and a door opening down the hall. Voices, low, urgent. Then silence. I stepped into the corridor. The light was dim, the house humming faintly with electricity again. Dante stood near the stairwell, phone in hand, face turned toward the darkness outside the window. I caught only fragments of what he said. If Serrano moves again, we answer loud. No warnings. He turned when he sensed me. Expression unreadable.
They're circling, he said.
I'll handle it. You can't fix this with threats. Then tell me how to fix it, Elena. His voice broke on my name, quiet but raw, and for a moment I saw the man beneath the armor. The one who'd walked into my ER bleeding and said thank you like he meant it. I didn't have an answer. So instead, I stepped closer. Close enough to see the exhaustion carved into the lines near his eyes, close enough to hear his breath catch when I whispered, "You can't do this alone." He looked down at me, searching for something, maybe belief, maybe permission. "I already am," he said. The thunder outside cracked. And before I could say anything else, the lights went out again. The house swallowed its own light. The rain kept speaking against the windows, soft and relentless, and somewhere below a generator tried to turn over and failed with a cough like a drowned match. "Stay with Noah," Dante said into the dark. "No," my answer came out before fear could tidy it. "I'm not leaving you blind." He was only a shape at first, tall, still, but I felt the change in his breathing, the flex of decision. Then his hand found mine.
Warm.
Grounded. He didn't pull, he asked.
1 minute, he said.
Then you go to him. We moved by memory down the hall, past the faint citrus of polished wood and the cool breath of the staircase. My shoulder brushed velvet wallpaper. Somewhere, water ticked in a copper pipe like a nervous clock. At the landing, Mateo's voice rose from below, low, tight. "Cut at the subpanel. Manual. Inside the fence." Inside. My stomach dropped. The Serranos weren't testing the gates anymore. They were here. A narrow beam of light cut the dark, Mateo's hand held. It slid over a framed photograph, over a bowl of keys that looked like coins, and stopped at a small metal hatch near the baseboard. The panel hung open, wires sheared clean. Dante squeezed my fingers once, but I shook my head. "I'll get Noah." Then the safe room. His silence held a dozen arguments and one reluctant respect.
2 floors down, he said.
Steel door at the end of the gallery. Code is your son's birthday. The words leveled me more than the plan. He'd already memorized Noah into the bones of his house. A soft chime broke through the dark, bright and domestic in a way that made my skin crawl. The baby monitor.
It wasn't supposed to chime.
I ran. My feet found the runner's edge by instinct. I skimmed the wall so I wouldn't hit a pedestal. The air changed as I neared Noah's room. Warmer, with the honest scent of toddler shampoo and milk, undercut by something metallic. My hand found the knob, turned, and the world snapped into a smaller circle. The dim nightlight glow in the corner, the soft rise and fall of my son in the bed too big for him, the monitor blinking, picking up interference. He lay on his side, one fist under his cheek, lips parted. When I touched him, his skin was warm and damp with sleep. I gathered him against me, that heavy, trusting weight that could eclipse a life in an instant, and his breath hitched but didn't break. Behind me, the monitor crackled and sang. A lullaby, off-key, tinny through static. Not mine. Not the one I used when he was colicky at 3 a.m. The notes wavered as if the singer were smiling. My heart raked my ribs. I killed the monitor and pressed Noah tighter to me, feeling the strong, stubborn drum of his heart against mine. In the hall again, the darkness felt thicker listening. I had the route in my head, down the back stairs, left at the bronze horse, straight until the gallery opened like a mouth, but a shadow detached itself near the junction, sudden and silent. I stopped so fast Noah's socked foot brushed my hip. "Lydia," I whispered, before the shadow even fully resolved. The housekeeper's voice came back at once, calm as a metronome. "With you." She lifted a candle lantern that smelled of beeswax and gave the smallest nod at the bundle in my arms. "He sleeps heavy."
Good.
We moved as a unit, her light held low and cupped, like we were protecting something softer than flame. My ears tuned to everything, the faint whisper of air through vents, the murmur of men on radios 3 rooms away, the drawn-out moan of a storm-lashed tree outside. The gallery's parquet whispered under our steps. Paintings watched us with eyes that knew every Moretti who'd ever made a mistake. At the steel door, my fingers shook for the first time. I keyed in Noah's birth date, picturing his red, furious face that first hour, the way the world had narrowed to the sound of him. The lock thunked, reassuring, heavy, and the door swung inward on quiet hinges. The safe room wasn't a bunker. It was a small, stubborn room that looked like a nursery had asked a bank vault for a favor. Soft rug, low lighting, a couch that folded into something like a bed. A filtered air unit hummed like a cat. There was a tiny bathroom, a sink, a cupboard with labeled boxes, diapers, wipes, non-perishable snacks, and a medical kit so well stocked my nurse's heart wanted to write a thank you note to whoever had thought of the pediatric acetaminophen. Lydia set the lantern down, turned a knob that revealed a bank of monitors. Backup power fed them a limited version of the house's eyes, grainy feeds, a spread of angles. On one, Mateo moved like a wolf through the hedges. On another, the side entrance, empty. On a third, a blur of motion near the kitchen door. Lydia adjusted the focus, mouth flattening. Not ours. Where's Dante? I asked, throat raw. She tapped a screen. The main hall, dark as a well. Then there, his silhouette at the top of the stairs, patient as gravity. Stay, she said, but it was to Noah, to me, to herself. She pressed something small and cold into my palm. A plastic strip with 2 buttons. Panic and All Call. Panic locks this room and triggers an internal siren. All Call calls every handset on the estate. I slid it into the pocket of my robe, the one I'd grabbed without realizing when I scooped Noah from the bed. Why is there singing on the monitor? Her eyes met mine. Because someone wants you to be afraid. I already am. Good, she said. Fear keeps people from doing stupid, brave things. On the nearest screen, the kitchen door eased open. A man in a rain jacket slid inside, paused like he wanted the house to remember him. He wiped a hand on his jeans. There was a familiarity in the way he moved, loose, like staff, like he'd memorized how not to bump a chair. He wore the wrong shoes for a thief. The right ones for a cleaner. Do you know him? I asked. Lydia's mouth barely moved. I know his walk. He's been paid to change it. Noah gave a small, sleepy whimper. I swayed, the old rhythm living somewhere in my bones, and the room wobbled back to something manageable for a heartbeat. His hair smelled like rain and apples. The sound he made was a tiny thing, but it lanced me with clarity. I can't sit here, I said. If someone gets hurt, You are a mother first. Lydia's voice was gentle and made of steel. And a nurse second. This is the order of things tonight. A crack sounded on one of the feeds, the sharp pop of a breaker being forced, made remote by static. Mateo's curse bled through a radio. The kitchen camera swung sideways, went dark. I need Dante to know we're in, I said. He knows, Lydia answered. The door tells him. She drew a breath. But I can call him anyway. She reached for the handset, paused, and looked at me, really looked. You love him? The question was a switchblade. I don't know him. That wasn't what I asked. I tightened my hold on Noah until he stirred. I love our son, I said. And I don't let fear decide who gets to touch my life. Good, she said again, like a benediction. Then you will survive him. Or with him. The intercom cracked alive before I could reply. Not the handset. The wall speaker. A voice poured through like oil. Pretty room, it said, amused. A man shaded with cigarette smoke and old laughter. You make it for the wife you don't have, more Eddie, or the son you didn't know. Either way, sweet. The camera feeds jittered, recalibrated, and one of them, this room's, blinked from black to an overhead angle that hadn't been on a second ago. A lens we hadn't known about woke up and stared down at us. Lydia's hand up for the panel, her fingers shooting toward the panic button. I caught her wrist. Wait. I breathed, because on the hall feed, 2 floors up, a second shape had stepped out of the dark behind Dante, a shadow peeling off the wall with a short blade glinting like a wet smile. Call him, I said, throat sandpaper, heart a hammer. The overhead camera tilted, slow and curious, as if it wanted a better look at the mother with a child in her arms who was about to choose between hiding and saving the man who could ruin her life, or deliver it back to her whole. "Call him now," I said. Lydia's finger hovered over the keypad. "I'll call," I whispered, throat raw. 2 floors up. Behind him. Blade. She slammed the button. The speaker crackled. Main hall, 2 o'clock, behind the boss. Her voice rang out through every handset in the house. Knife. On the monitor, Dante didn't turn, he moved, a clean pivot that turned his back into absence. The blade cut air where he'd been. His hand caught the attacker's wrist. The knife clattered, skidding out of frame. The struggle was a shadow play. Breaths, impacts, a grunt that felt too human for a myth. Then Mateo blurred in from the stairwell, like a second thought made muscle. 3 heartbeats later, the shape was on the floor, hands wrenched behind his back, the dark blot of a hood yanked away. The man looked like nobody, serviceable face, serviceable haircut, eyes that slid off focus like rain off wax. But on his neck, above the collar, ink bloomed, 3 diagonal slashes. Serrano. My knees softened with relief that ashamed me. My palms were slick where they cradled Noah. The overhead camera gave a curious tilt, as if disappointed the theater had ended. Lydia hit a second control. The lens went black. "Physical kill switch," she said. "Mechanical beats code." On a split screen, the kitchen intruder met his own bad decision. 2 of Dante's men pinning him by the wrists, a pan clinging to the tiles, the monitor shivering at the impact. No blood. Just the breathless choreography of a fight already decided by who knew the hallways. The house exhaled. I realized I hadn't. Dante appeared on the camera outside our door, chest rising like a tide, shirt open at the throat. He didn't knock. He keyed in the code I'd used minutes ago, Noah's date, and stepped in, stopping when he saw the curve of our son against my shoulder, as if an invisible rope had tugged him to a halt. "You're in," he said, voice low. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "We're in." His gaze flicked to Lydia. Status. 2 inside. Both down. No signs of more. Her chin lifted toward a dark square on the console. They woke a camera we didn't know about. His eyes cooled. "Show me where the line runs." "Later," she said, with the audacity only someone who'd known him as a boy could carry. "Right now you look at them." He did. He looked like he was memorizing something he couldn't bear to forget. Noah's heavy sleep, the damp curl at the nape of his neck, the way my hand curved to hold that small back without thinking. He didn't step closer. He obeyed my rules without me speaking them. "May I?" He stopped, corrected. "Can I sit?" Consent lived in the simple grammar. I nodded to the couch. He lowered himself onto the edge like a man approaching the saint he wasn't sure would forgive him, and sat with his elbows on his knees, hands slack. Close enough for presence. Far enough for air. Noah made a small protesting sound, stirring. I shifted, and his lashes fluttered without waking. The room hummed, filters, hidden fans. I could smell rain in Dante's coat and the faint iron of adrenaline cooling. "I heard the lullaby," I said. Through the monitor. "I didn't put music in this room," he answered, frowning. "Someone did." Lydia moved to the small cupboard, slid out a handheld scanner I'd seen in Nikki once, searching for swallowed pennies. She passed it slowly over the crib sheets, the walls, the diaper caddy. Nothing. When she neared the bear in Noah's fist, the device chirped, a bright, domestic sound that made my stomach drop. "No," I whispered. "Let me," Dante said. I hesitated, then eased the bear free with surgical care. Noah grumbled, hand closing on the blanket instead. Lydia slit an invisible seam at the nape with a seam ripper, her hand sure. A pearl of metal nested in the stuffing. A button, white, harmless looking.
"Tracker," she said.
Then tilted it. Mic, speaker. Camera, pinhead. Clever little monster. Was it always there? I asked Bao low. Did I miss this for months? Lydia's mouth softened.
No.
Stitching is fresh. Whoever did it knew how to hide a thread, but not the way cotton ages. She glanced at Dante. Daycare. His jaw worked once. He didn't curse. He looked at Noah and then at me. We'll pay them to rebuild their security from the studs or shut them down trying. But for tonight. The button in Lydia's palm blinked once, a lazy eyelid. Then my phone lit up on the cushion beside me and vibrated, a worm writhing on a hook. Unknown number. A video call. I let it ring once.
Twice.
I looked at Dante. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. He held himself still the way men do when they've decided not to touch fate with their hands. I answered. The picture was grainy, gray-green. At first all I saw was the ceiling of a car, fabric dimpled like the inside of an egg carton. Then the camera flipped. A man leaned into frame. Hood up, the kind of face you'd forget on purpose. He smiled without showing teeth. Cute room, he said, the same voice that had oiled through the wall speaker. The audio lagged half a beat. But you won't be in that one tomorrow. He angled the phone. For a second, the shot went wild. Dashboard, rain-slick street, the ghost of his own reflection in the windshield, and then landed on the bear's tiny white button in a gloved hand. He tapped it. The lullaby warbled tinnily from Lydia's palm. My skin went cold. He'd been close enough to test it. Recently. Bring the boy to Pier 17 at dawn, he said, almost friendly. Mom comes alone. Or CPS wakes up with a judge and a story. The call ended. The button in Lydia's hand went still. Silence took the room by the throat. Dante's voice, when it came, was not the voice he used to move money or men. It was quieter, more dangerous for it. You're not going. I didn't look away. He said alone. He said leverage. You are not a lever. He's mine, I said, every syllable made of bone. If walking into dawn gets this out of his shadow. It won't. Dante stood, slow, as if any sudden motion might fracture the little world inside the steel door. Serrano doesn't trade in clean endings. You go, he keeps asking. You don't, he escalates. The only answer is to make asking impossible.
How?
By taking his options. He turned to Lydia. Wake the staff. No one in or out. Scrub the house, every vent, every hinge. Mateo runs point with city contacts. Quiet warrants where we can. Noise where we must. On it, she said, already moving. I shifted Noah higher against my shoulder. He sighed, sank deeper into sleep, as if the edges of the world could be negotiated without him. My heart battered the cage of my ribs, hurting for how easy trust is when you're small. I looked at Dante. Don't order me not to go, I said. Ask me. He closed his eyes for a beat, opened them on something naked. Please, Elena, don't go. I made a new rule in my head. When a man like him says please, listen. Okay, I said. We do it your way until dawn. He stepped closer and stopped, hands open. May I? His eyes flicked to Noah's hair. Touch his hand. The ask cracked something in me I didn't know was still hard. I guided Noah's small palm to Dante's larger one. Dante's fingers didn't close. He let the weight of that tiny hand rest in his, as if even answering its gravity felt like a privilege he hadn't earned yet. Noah sighed, dream deep. The monitors shuffled light. On one of them, a new image bloomed, a live feed of the estate gate, rain banding through the lamps. Another car had stopped there. Not slick, not dangerous looking. Beige, civilian, tired. Lydia frowned, leaned in, then swore softly in Italian. Madonna. I didn't need the zoom to recognize the woman inside. Gray cardigan, hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, chin knotted with worry. My mother. The intercom buzzed at once, brittle with weather. A voice came through. House system. Gate phone, I couldn't tell. Elena, she said, tinny, afraid of herself. Sweetheart, it's Mom. There were men at your building. They said. She swallowed. They said your son's father wants to see me. A second voice cut over hers. Too warm to be weather. Pier 17. It said, like an echo that had never learned to die.
Dawn.
Bring the boy. Or Mom learns what the water sounds like up close. The gate camera went black. I felt Dante's hand at my elbow before I realized I was swaying. The room narrowed to breath, to the apple-sweet smell of my son's hair, to the rain drilling its patient message into the night. Pier 17.
Dawn. Alone.
My mouth shaped the words without sound. The rain thinned toward dawn, switching from a hard drumming to the fine hiss of a kettle. The house steadied under its own bones. Inside the safe room, time was a square, 4 walls, 1 clock, a set of decisions that refused to get smaller. We planned the pier like a surgery, Dante said. Systems first. Then contingencies. Then the exit, if everything goes wrong. He stood in front of the monitors with Matteo and Lydia while I rocked Noah in a shallow sway that soothed me more than him. The air had the filtered, slightly metallic scent of hospital oxygen. Clean, too clean. I watched Dante's hands as much as his face. Precise, economical, signaling without flourish. The CEO and the capo fit together like 2 sides of a scalpel. 17 is all angles, Matteo said, drawing with a grease pencil over an aerial printout Lydia had pulled from a drawer like a magician's scarf. Boardwalk here. Tourist shops here. Ferries here. Mooring posts 5. Cameras 8. Sight lines garbage. Police? I asked. Too slow and too visible, Dante said. Serrano picked a place where uniforms mean spectacle. He wants a crowd. He thrives on eyes. We do it before the city wakes, Matteo added. Between the delivery trucks and the morning runners. Your mother? Dante's voice softened a degree, not much. She won't be at the gate again.
Her phone is off, I said.
If he has her, he's not risking chatter. Lydia set a thermos by my elbow, coffee dense enough to stand a spoon in, and a neat stack of protein bars that tasted like peanuts and chalk. We build the plan, she said. Then we put the fear in a box. Boxes leak, I said. Then we build a better one. Dante tapped the map with a knuckle. He asked for Mom alone with the boy. He expects a mother's panic. He expects Elena will follow rules when they sound like love. We counter by giving him something that looks like the rule from a distance but fails on contact. He looked to me, not through me. You're the fulcrum, he said, but not the weight. I go, I said, before he could make the decision mine in gentler words. Matteo's gaze flicked toward Dante, the kind of glance men use when they don't want to speak a truth out loud. Dante heard it anyway. She's the only one Serrano believes, he said tightly. But she doesn't go blind. I hated that the agreement landed like relief. What does not blind look like? I asked. Comms, Matteo said, already moving, the grease pencil behind his ear like a carpenter's. Nothing that can be swept downstream by a jammer. He returned with a shallow case of devices that looked domestic until you touched them. He opened it like a violinist revealing strings. Bone conduction earpiece hidden under hair. Mic in the seam of your coat. Secondary channel keyed to a pulse on this ring. He held up a simple silver band. You squeeze, short for yes, long for no, double for danger, triple for move now. I'm a nurse, I said. You give me signals, I'll memorize them. Lydia produced a nondescript stroller from a closet. Matte frame, no logos. Looks like any other city stroller, she said. Except the canopy is Kevlar weave and the lower basket holds a plate that says hello to shrapnel and keeps walking. God, I murmured. Do you outfit the pantry too? She patted my shoulder. The sugar is just sugar. We're rehearsed. Being bait is acting, and acting is breath. In the small room, we turned movement into muscle memory. How I'd approach the pier, where I'd stop, how I'd lift my chin as if I could smell the river and not the trap. Where my hands would be, visible, calm. How I'd turn my head a certain degree to cue the angle of the tiny camera embedded in one earring, the only jewelry I owned that didn't feel like a borrowed life. Dante placed his thumb lightly at the hinge of my jaw, guiding the degree. A half-inch more, a half-inch less. His touch was measured, professional, devastating. When they say alone, I said, they mean they'll be watching for anyone with me. We won't be with you, Matteo said. We'll be with the pier. He ran through placements like a prayer. 2 of his men in maintenance vests, one at the ferry kiosk, one pretending to jog, a camera mounted tonight to a goal lamp-eyed pole, a diver's team Abdul owed them, under the lip of the old dock pilings, a drone no larger than a palm, its rotors so quiet the rain would eat the sound. And exit routes? I asked. Dante drew 3 arrows with a grease pencil, the line-level confidence of a man who made roads happen. One straight back to the car, bad if followed. One along the river path to a second vehicle, good if we didn't spook every dog walker in Manhattan. One down the service ramp to a maintenance door few tourists knew existed. We make Serrano choose a mistake, he said. Whichever one he picks, we've planned for the opposite. Noah woke just enough to ask for water in a voice that sounded like sand. I tipped a cup to his lips and he drank, eyes half closed, trusting the world to be gentle. The cup clinked softly against his teeth, a tiny sound that felt like a bell calling me back to the room. When he slept again, I tucked the blanket around his legs, the soft scrape of flannel speaking a language I understood better than code. Tell me about Serrano, I said, still watching my child breathe. Not the rumors. The man. Dante's eyes didn't leave the map. He likes stories where he's the only author. He thinks debt is a blood type. He believes fear is a currency that never deflates. And you? I believe in leverage, he said. But I don't put my hand on a scale I haven't built. Matteo barked a short laugh. Translation, he said to me. Boss doesn't bluff. Also, he hates stocks. Why? I asked. Now tie the red rope, the voice coaxed. Or the woman goes for a swim. I heard the sound before I understood it. The small, clean pop of a flare gun going off somewhere out of sight. A moment later, red bloomed in the air near the ferry like a wounded flower, casting the pier in a hellish glow. The crowd, what little there was, looked up, instincts tilting toward spectacle. In the red light, I saw the truth I'd been trying not to see. On the upper deck, my mother's cardigan was too neat. The hood too smooth. The posture too rigid. The woman wasn't breathing. A mannequin. A decoy. Where is she? I asked, and the calm in my voice turned everything around it sharper. Closer than you think, the voice said, happy with himself. Tie the bow. I bent as if to tie. My fingers found the leash, slid it over the cleat, pulled once to test. It tightened with a domestic snick too suggestive to ignore. It's a child harness, I said. You want me to leash my son to a post? No, he said, and the word was all sugar. I want you to learn the shape of surrender. I straightened, slow. You picked the wrong mother. I squeezed the ring 3 times. The pier moved. A jogger stopped being a jogger and produced a baton that snapped long with a flick. The sanitation worker stepped back from the hose and pulled a tarp that hit a camera array. A goal lamp hummed as the small drone hummed to life, lifting like a moth. Under the boards, a shadow detached from the pilings and became a diver. On the ferry, the red flare died and something else lit. A quiet spark behind a window no one would notice if they weren't looking for it. The man in the vest lunged for the stroller. I pivoted hard, the Kevlar canopy between his hands and my child, the stroller's weight turning like a planet under my grip. The man's shin met the cleat. His balance went on vacation. He stumbled, cursed, human, too human. A blast of pressurized water hit him from the side, the sanitation hose, redirected with surgical precision. He went down cursing, sliding on his own surprise. The second man reached for my arm. His fingers touched, and Dante was there. I didn't see where he came from. He was simply in the air, force applied where it would end the movement without ending the man. The grip broke. The hand fell away. The man took a step back into a world that had changed shape without asking him. Don't, Dante said, and the single syllable was a line drawn on stone. I heard a fresh sound then, small and wrong, a phone vibrating in the undercarriage of the stroller, where Lydia had stowed spare diapers. Not mine, not Dante's. A third phone, humming like a living thing. I shoved my hand into the storage and found it, cheap, slick, taped under the frame. It buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered on instinct. A video feed filled the screen. A little room with cheap wood paneling and a too-bright lamp. My mother on a chair, hands bound in front after all, hood off now, eyes bright with anger more than fear. "Elena," she said, relief cracking her mouth into my name. "Mi amor." The call jolted as someone pulled the camera back. A hand entered the frame, gloved, steady. It set down a small object on the table beside her. Black box. Green LED. The same bored eye as the one on the piling. Tick-tock, the voice purred through the speaker. "Move your feet, nurse. Or I move my hand." The red flare smoke thinned, and the morning decided to be morning after all, a gray light flattening everything into inevitability. The runners would arrive soon. The ferries would fill. And there I was, one hand on a stroller, one hand holding a window into a room where love had been tied to a chair, calculating the distance between a cleat and a choice. I looked up and saw Dante looking at me like a man who knew what it meant to drop power and pick up faith.
He didn't speak.
He didn't need to. I turned the stroller toward the end of the pier. Behind me, the phone on speaker said, almost cheerfully, "That's my girl." And from somewhere in the boards, a hollow space, a place where a knot had fallen out years ago, I heard a tiny, inexorable click. The click lived in the wood, small, satisfied, like a tongue against teeth. I froze. The stroller's front wheel hovered over a hairline seam. The river breathed cold up through the boards. I could smell creosote and old rope, the iron of the water rising. "Pressure plate," Mateo whispered in my ear. "Don't shift your weight." The phone on speaker showed my mother, too bright, too still. The black box by her elbow blinked its bored green eye. I pictured the other box below me, strapped to a piling, a bored twin waiting for permission to matter. I didn't move. Neither did the man in the safety vest on the ground, water pooling under him in a dark halo. The second man eased his hands open, empty, calculating. The city held its breath. Dante's voice slid into my ear like a hand finding mine. "Elena, look at me." I lifted my eyes. He stood a pace off my right shoulder, calm made of angles. Rain clung to his lashes. Behind him, the drone hovered at gull height, silent as thought. "We're going to lift the stroller back an inch," he said softly. "Not you. Mateo's under the boards. He'll take the weight." "Copy," Mateo breathed. Somewhere beneath us, water lapped against wood with the sound of a slow clock. On my mark 3, 2. A pressure I hadn't known my hands were making eased from the handle as the stroller rose. Fractional, steady. Noah stirred, made a soft, fish bubble sound, and settled. I held my breath until my lungs asked to be remembered. "Clear," Mateo said. "Plate armed. Do not, repeat, do not touch that cleat." Dante's gaze went past me to the ferry, to the unbreathing figure in the gray cardigan. "We're done with the bow," he said, voice level. "New plan." The phone on speaker gave a silvery laugh. "I like improvisers," the voice said. "They make the best mistakes." I turned the phone so the camera faced the pier, letting him see the red rope, leash untouched. "You wanted theater. You got a rehearsal." "Where is my mother?" "Say please," he said. The urge to hurl the phone into the river burned up my arm. I swallowed it, swallowed pride, swallowed the river air. "Please." "So polite," he crooned. "Check the kiosk. Top shelf. Third brochure from the left." Dante flicked his eyes. Mateo was already moving, a maintenance man again. He lifted a rack of glossy pamphlets, harbor cruises, oysters, a ghost tour that promised chills, and slid the third from the left free. A key tumbled onto his palm.
"Brass. Old."
"One step closer," the voice said. "We're teaching the boy patience." I put the phone on the stroller's tray, speaker aimed at the empty air. "While you teach me obedience," I said. "Where does the key go?" "Ask your man who hates docks," he said. Dante's jaw ticked. "Harbor master's office," he murmured. "Under the stairs. Old locker room from the days when the city was honest about bribes." "Bingo," the voice sang. "Walk there, nurse. Alone." My thumb found the ring, short squeeze. Yes. I pushed the stroller. taking the long arc that avoided the cleat and the seam and the promise of a click becoming consequence. The boardwalk changed under my feet, from open planks to tight wood, the sound shifting from hollow to solid. Every scent sharpened: diesel, salt, fish guts going sweet. The harbor master's door stuck and then gave, opening on a room that smelled like mops and history. A corkboard bore faded notices, tide tables, lost keys. No smoking, seriously. Under the stairs, the lockers sat in a row like old men on a bench. I tried the key in the second because stories like symmetry. It turned in the fourth because real life does not. Inside, a shoebox. Inside the shoebox, a phone and a note. The note read, "Run the phone. 5 minutes. Then throw it away." The paper smelled faintly of cigarettes and cloves. The phone booted to a map with a single pulsing. North of the pier. 2 miles by road, 1 by water. Red Hook. Mateo's voice was tight and pleased. "We have him. Tower triangulation plus this breadcrumb. We ghost the call. We follow the trail." The speaker hissed. "No, no," the voice said. "You follow the rules. Nurse alone. Boy in tow." People get so disobedient with hope. I looked at Dante. "He's losing the leash," I said, keeping my voice flat. "He's scared I'll choose you instead of him." "Then choose me," Dante said. I made myself meet his eyes. "Cover the pier. Keep the walkers safe. Get the plate off the piling. If you come to Red Hook and it turns bad, they'll film a war. If I go and it turns bad, they'll film a tragedy. Which one do you prefer broadcast?" He didn't blink. "Neither." "We don't get neither," I said quietly. "We get best bad." His jaw set, a ruler drawn under a sentence. "2 shadows only," he said to Mateo. "No more. Elena sets the pace. We eat static and we like the taste." Lydia appeared in the doorway with a thin blanket that smelled like lavender. She draped it over the stroller canopy, tucking the edges like weather. Her eyes found mine. "If this goes wrong, look at him," she said softly, nodding toward Noah. "Not at the men. Love will tell you where to run." "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet," she said, and ghosted away the way good housekeepers do, appearing exactly where they're needed, leaving no trace they were ever there. We left the office into a morning that had shrugged on daylight without agreeing to it. The city yawned, rubbed at its eyes. Trucks shifted gears. Somewhere, a bakery opened its door and warm sugar rode the air for one holy second. The phones that crept along the map like a heartbeat. We followed by roads that had not been designed for mercy, under bridges, past stacks of shipping containers painted in a cheerful palette that didn't fool anyone. The stroller's wheels rattled over cracked concrete. Noah slept like he trusted the world to keep time. Red Hook smelled like wet brick and salt. The dot stopped at a warehouse with a faded sign, D'Angelo Marine. A chain-link fence sagged at the corner, a place where a small person could slip through and a large person wouldn't try. Graffiti bloomed on brick in angry flowers. A pigeon had made terrible choices on a window ledge. 2 blocks, Dante had promised. He wasn't visible. That was the promise kept. I rolled the stroller through the fence gap. Glass crunched under my shoe like grit. The warehouse door stood ajar, on purpose. Inside, the air changed temperature, cooler, with the metallic bite of tools and the sweet hint of motor oil. A fluorescent tube flickered, buzzing in an apology it didn't mean. "Left," the phone whispered. "Then right. Then left." The voice had dropped to a murmur, intimate and tired, as if the speaker were close enough to taste the air I breathed. We obeyed. The hallway narrowed. In one room, a boat hull sat suspended like a rib cage, sawdust dusting the floor in a pale drift. In another, coils of rope and a calendar 2 years out of date. The last turn opened on a small office and the smell of fear. My mother sat in a chair placed between 2 filing cabinets. Hands bound.
Hood off now.
Eyes on me like anchors. "Elena," she said in a voice that had shaped the first word I'd ever owned. "Don't you dare cry." I didn't. I set the brake on the stroller. I put my hand on her shoulder and felt the damp warmth of her skin under the cardigan. She was shaking with adrenaline that had nowhere to go. "You're here," I said. "I'm here," she said. "And you're not alone." "Quiet, ladies," the voice said, but it wasn't through the phone anymore. It came from the doorway at my back. I didn't turn. I looked at my mother and felt her look back and knew we were the same person, pulled through time through the same stubbornness. I slid my thumb under the ring and made the tiniest double squeeze. "Good girl," the man said. He stepped where the corner camera on my earring could see him. He had the kind of face you forgot when you needed to. Average height, average build, the smooth hands of someone who paid others to scrub. He wore a windbreaker and a smile that wanted witnesses.
His eyes, though.
They were small and happy. A man who enjoyed the part of a story where the heroine hasn't learned how sharp she is yet. "You walk out with the boy, I walk out with Mom," he said. "We say hello at the door and part as friends. No one needs to get inventive." I met his gaze. "And the box." "What box?" "The one by her elbow on the video. The one taped to a piling." I tilted my head, let the earring find his shoulder, his jaw. "You rigged both. One to spook the peer. One to fix the ending." He smiled wider, which is what men do when they don't like that you notice the details. "You watch too many movies," he said. "Or too many monitors," I said. "You put a camera in my child's bear." "Borrowed," he said, cheerful. "We were going to return it."
Alive.
He let the silence answer. Behind him, down the corridor, a board creaked. He didn't notice. My mother did. Her eyes flicked once past my shoulder and back. She hadn't been idle in that chair. She'd been counting the music of the building. "Show me your hands," I said. "Not how this works." "Then this is how it works." I bent to the stroller, as if to lift Noah. My thumb found the ring, 3 short pulses.
"Move now."
The world compressed. The window on the opposite wall spidered, an impact without sound, and a dark shape slid through the broken teeth of glass, breath tight, splashless. "Mateo." Another shape filled the doorway behind the man, quiet and large as a door that wanted to close.
"Dante."
The man made a decision. He reached for my mother's shoulder, not with tenderness, but with the small black box in his hand, the green LED blinking like a lazy eye. "Stop," Dante said. The man didn't. He touched the box to my mother's cardigan like a stamp, and the world made a noise I'd only ever heard in trauma rooms when someone opened a chest, a wet thump, a breath cut in half, an ugly little gasp of electricity. My mother jerked, then stilled. "Shock pack," the man said brightly, stepping back as if he'd demonstrated a toy. "Remote defib. No one dies. Not yet. But no one runs either." I was already at her side, fingers to her neck, the heel of my hand to her sternum. Her pulse fluttered, bird fast. Beneath my palm, her heart stumbled and found itself again. Pain flushed her face. Fury kept her eyes clear. "I'm okay," she rasped, and then screamed when the second jolt hit. "Enough," Dante said, and there was something in the word that made the lights themselves hesitate. The man grinned at him. "I've been waiting to hear you say that," he said. "Say it again," into a microphone. Mateo moved. Dante moved. The man moved. It all happened inside a breath. The black box skittered to the floor and spun. The stroller rocked, but the brake held. My mother's breath came in saw-saw halves. The phone on the shelf buzzed and fell and cracked its own screen like ice. I kicked the box under the cabinet with a heel that had learned something new about itself. "No toys," I said. "Not with my family." The man reached for his belt, found air where a weapon should have been. Dante had already given it to the floor. Mateo's arm locked around his throat. The man smiled even then, delighted by the reveal we hadn't seen yet. From the hallway, a new sound slid in. High, nervous, metallic, the long exhale of a time device instructing air to be thinner. My scalp prickled. "What is that?" Dante's eyes cut to the vent above the door. He swore once, a quiet word with weight. "Chloropicrin," he said. "Tear gas blend. Vintage." The man laughed, muffled in Mateo's hold. Old school. Catches in the lungs. Hard to prove later. My mother coughed, a wrenching bark that bent her in the chair. Noah stirred, small and scared, under the blanket. I had 3 patients and 2 hands. Dante read the math in my face and made a choice. He grabbed the stroller, ripped the blanket off, and thrust it at me. "Wet it," he said, already dragging the chair with my mother toward the door. Seal mouths. Eyes closed. Lower to the floor. Water. The sink in the corner sputtered to life, with a twist that took too long. I soaked the blanket, wrung, pressed it over my mother's nose and mouth, held her eyes shut with my fingertips. "Breathe through this," I said. "Shallow. It's not pretty. It's enough." Noah whimpered, the sound turning razors under my skin. Dante lifted him against his chest, tucked his face to his shoulder, and covered both their mouths with the wet cloth in a practiced motion that told a story I'd ask later and forgive now. Mateo dragged the gasping man into the hall and threw him toward an exit that had chosen to exist. The man staggered, coughed, kept laughing. Alarms woke somewhere in the building, too late and too loud. The vent hissed harder, crueler. We moved. Out of the office, down the narrow corridor, bodies low, eyes shut against the sting that tried to write its name behind them. My mother's fingers dug crescent moons into my wrist. Noah's small back shuddered against Dante's chest. The outer door stuck and then gave. Air hit us, wet, honest, wide. "Car," Mateo coughed.
Now.
We spilled into gray daylight that had decided to be real. The metal taste faded from the back of my tongue. Tears ran without my permission. I let them go. Behind us, the man leaned on the doorway like a date gone wrong. "See you soon," he called, eyes bright, lungs wheezing. Pier 17 was charming. The sequel will be better. Dante turned, Noah in his arms, and looked at him the way a man looks at a problem he's already solved, just not yet. "No," he said. "There won't be one." The man smiled like he didn't believe in endings that weren't his. We loaded fast. Mateo drove like a man who loved the car more than the rules. My mother wheezed and swore and squeezed my hand until circulation complained. Noah rubbed his face against Dante's jacket, snuffling, confused. At the first red light that meant nothing, my mother turned her head, eyes wet and clear, and looked at Dante. "You," she said, voice shredded. "Are you the father?"
He didn't look at me.
He didn't look away. "Yes, ma'am." She considered him for the length of a single breath. "Good," she said. "Then don't let go." She closed her eyes. The light turned green. Ahead, the city lifted its eyelids. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text. No number. 6 words that dropped the temperature in the car by 10 degrees.
"Check your building."
4th floor window. I saw it in my head before Mateo turned the wheel. My apartment. For flights up, a plant I kept forgetting to water. A window that didn't latch quite right. And a shape standing in the frame, looking down at the street, holding something small and white that used to be inside a bear. We turned the corner onto my block. The window was open. The street looked wrong before we even stopped. Trash trucks were rumbling somewhere east, but this block was too quiet. The kind of quiet that listens back. My building's brick facade had that soft dawn color it always did, rosy, ordinary, but the open window on the 4th floor gaped like a missing tooth. Curtains flapped in the wind, gray instead of white. The bear's tiny white button gleamed in the figure's hand, catching light. Dante said nothing, just rested Noah's head more securely against his shoulder and let his free hand drift to his sidearm. Mateo killed the engine, the car gliding to stillness a half-block away. My mother's breath rasped in the back seat, her hand gripping my sleeve. "Stay with her," I said. "No," Dante answered and opened the door. "I mean it. You can't both." "I'm not leaving you," he said, eyes never leaving the window. He looked like calm carved out of something harder. His gaze tracked every angle, every alley. If they'd been inside, they could have cameras in your walls, sensors. Mateo locked down the block. No sirens, no lights. Mateo's mouth quirked. "You like quiet," He was already moving. I unbuckled, forcing my body to cooperate. My limbs felt like they'd been loaned to me. "He's upstairs," I said. "My apartment faces south. Fire escape to the alley. There's an old alarm wire near the kitchen." "Show me." Dante cut in, not unkind. He handed Noah into my mother's lap, crouched by the open door. "Keep both of you below window line. Mateo's people will sweep in 3 minutes." My mother nodded once, her hand automatically rocking Noah.
Go, she said.
"Don't die, stupid." It was such a her thing to say that I almost laughed. Then I ran. We slipped through the lobby's glass doors. One pane cracked since summer, mailboxes dented, the floor smelling faintly of bleach, and someone's forgotten dinner. My name on the mail slot still read E. Cruz, RN. Normal. Too normal. The stairwell was narrow, all peeling paint, and the faint echo of pipes. 4th floor. The steps creaked in predictable places. I'd learned to avoid them when coming home late from shifts. Dante moved behind me without sound, his breath measured, one hand resting lightly on the rail. At the landing, the air changed. A faint chemical scent, familiar but wrong. Lemon oil, maybe. Or solvent. I pressed a hand to the apartment door. The wood was cool, dry. I tried the knob. Unlocked. I looked back at him. He shook his head once. "Let me." He turned the knob with gloved fingers, easing the door open 1/2 inch. Light spilled out in thin strips. Morning light, untouched. No movement. He went first. I followed. The living room was as I'd left it. Noah's shoes by the door, my scrub jacket over the arm of the couch. But the air had that faint, wrong echo again, like someone had been here and tried to erase themselves afterward. The curtains swayed in the breeze from the open window. On the floor, near the window, sat a white envelope. Plain, clean, deliberate. I picked it up before he could stop me. Inside, a single Polaroid. My apartment. This room, taken from the opposite corner, where the bookshelf met the wall. Date scrawled in the border. Last night. "Camera angle from here," Dante said. He crossed to the shelf, ran his hand along the top row of books. His fingers paused on a small object tucked between 2 paperbacks. A lighter?
No.
A lens, disguised in matte plastic, wired to a transmitter smaller than a coin. "Serrano's people were here," he said. "They wanted you to know." Why show their hand? Because they think they still own the board. He dropped the lens into his pocket, turned back toward the window. "They'll expect us to bolt. We won't." "What do we do?" "Make it look like we did." He was already pulling his phone out, texting in shorthand that looked like code. Mateo's reply came back a moment later. "Teams on both exits. No heat.
Clean."
"Whoever left this was alone," Dante said. "Probably scouting. They'll have a car nearby. Maybe eyes still on the building." I looked at the Polaroid again. Behind my reflection, Dante's face hovered, still, controlled. The image blurred a little in my shaking hand. "They've seen us together. That changes everything. It confirms what they already knew," he said. "That you matter." He walked to the window, leaned out slightly. "Mateo," he said into the calm, mirror route. "Ghost car, South Alley. We leave through the fire escape. Make it look rushed."
Copy.
I grabbed a small duffel, Noah's things, the essentials. My hands moved without asking permission. Wipes, formula, change of clothes. Dante watched me for a second, eyes unreadable. "You pack like you've done this before," he said. "I used to work trauma night shifts," I said. "Every minute counted. You learn what matters." He nodded once. "Keep that." We slipped out onto the fire escape, the metal slick with mist. The city below was waking, early traffic, a siren far off, a bakery van turning the corner. Dante descended first, checking each landing with his eyes before stepping. I followed, duffel slung over one shoulder. Halfway down, something clinked. A coin? No, metal on metal, not gravity, but intent. He froze. The sound came again from the level below. Dante raised one hand, wait, and leaned over the rail. I couldn't see who was there, only the flicker of a shadow against the brick, the glint of something reflective. Then a shape stepped out, male, early 30s maybe, thin, nervous. Not one of Dante's men. He had a phone raised, camera pointed upward. Filming. Dante dropped lightly to the next landing, fast and silent, grabbed the phone from the man's hand before he could blink. The man stammered, eyes wide. "Who sent you?" Dante's voice was a calm blade. "And no one," the man said. I sell footage. Tips, street reels. Someone said a nurse, woman lives here. Told me she'd be." "Who?" I asked. "Username only. Ghost rope. Said she'd show up with a kid, maybe Moretti. Paid for 5 minutes of video. Said posted at dawn. Tag it, hidden air." My stomach dropped. Hidden air. Dante pocketed the phone, the motion sharp. "Get off this fire escape," he said, voice low but not cruel. "Forget what you saw. If I see that video online, I'll know you remembered wrong." The man nodded so fast his cap fell off. He scrambled down the ladder and vanished into the alley. I exhaled. He wanted it public. "Yes," Dante said. "Serrano's not just after leverage now. He's building a narrative." "What narrative?" "That I took something that wasn't mine and lied about it." I felt cold spread behind my ribs. "You mean Noah?" "Among other things." He looked past me toward the east. The first true sunlight touched the buildings across the street, turning their windows pale gold. "This goes public. It's not just you and me," he said. "It's the board. The family council. They'll think I've been keeping a secret heir to consolidate control. And if they believe that, they'll want proof. DNA. Or a funeral." The words hit like a stone dropped into a well. "You're saying your own people." "I'm saying they don't distinguish between loyalty and threat." For a second, the city noise felt distant, as if we'd stepped outside its heartbeat. I stared at him, at the man who was both my son's father and the storm I'd been running from, and saw exhaustion under the steel. "What do we do now?" I whispered. He met my eyes. "We don't hide anymore. We control the story before it controls us." He turned toward the street, scanning the line of parked cars. "Matteo's team will stage an evacuation. You and Noah disappear under a new name until this is done. And you, I stay visible," he said. "I draw the fire. Dante, it's the only way to protect him." I opened my mouth to argue, but a sharp crack split the air. Not thunder. Gunshot. The sound ricocheted between the buildings, glass shivering. Dante shoved me back against the wall, shielding me with his body. "Stay down." Another shot, lower, closer. A car alarm screamed. He leaned out just enough to see. "Sniper," he said. "Alley mouth. Single position. Matteo." "Already moving." He reached for his comm again. 3-7, suppressing fire, South Alley. I could hear Matteo's terse reply, the sound of controlled chaos. Then, through the ringing in my ears, a third sound, a small cry from above.
"Hi."
Fragile. Familiar.
"Noah."
I looked up. Through the open apartment window, a shadow moved, small, light, human. He wasn't with my mother anymore. He was standing by the window, looking down. Alone. And the curtain beside him fluttered. But this time, there was no wind. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. Noah's silhouette in the window looked unreal, a paper cutout against the brightening sky. His little hand rested on the glass, palm open, as if trying to wave away the danger beneath him. Then the curtain behind him shifted again, not by wind, but by someone standing there. A taller shadow. A gloved hand reached forward, touching Noah's shoulder. My voice ripped the air. "Noah." Dante didn't hesitate. He was already vaulting up the fire escape, moving like he'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. Metal groaned under his boots. "Stay down," he shouted. But I didn't. I couldn't. I followed, the duffel slapping my hip, my lungs burning. I'd climbed these stairs countless nights before, but never with fear clawing at my throat. Every creak in the metal sounded like a countdown. A gunshot cracked again. Glass exploded from a window 2 floors below. The bullet had missed, but barely. Matteo, suppressing fire. Top floor. Dante barked into his calm. His voice was the only thing keeping me tethered to reason. My feet knew nothing but the pull of my son's name. When we reached the fourth-floor landing, Dante grabbed the sill and pulled himself through the open window first, gun raised, movements silent and lethal. I scrambled after him. The room was smoke and dust, sunlight slicing through it like broken glass. Noah was no longer at the window. The small footprints on the floor were still wet from his socks. He'd been lifted away moments ago. "Back room," Dante whispered. We moved toward the hallway, his hand signaling me to stop. I didn't, because I could hear it now, a sound I'd know anywhere. Noah's cry, high and frightened, from the kitchen. I burst past Dante before he could stop me. A man stood near the counter, stocky, wearing a utility jacket. One arm looped around Noah, the other holding a small black pistol. The gun looked oversized in his trembling hand, not a professional, but desperate. "Don't," he barked. His voice cracked. Sweat gleamed on his temple. "Don't come closer. He's just a kid, I just..." "Then don't," I said, hands lifted. My body knew this posture from trauma calls. Calm a volatile patient by seconds of sense. "You don't want this. I can hear it in your voice. Just let him go." The man's eyes flicked to Dante behind me, widening in panic. I said, "Stay back. You're more Eddie." "Put the gun down," Dante said quietly. "No threat, no heat. Just fact. You walk away now, you live." The man shook his head. "He said you'd say that. He said you always make deals you can't keep." "He lied," Dante said. The gun trembled. Noah whimpered, clutching the man's sleeve. Something shifted then. A sound from outside, a scrape of boot on fire escape. Mateo's team, closing in. The man heard it too. His eyes darted to the window. "You called backup." His panic snapped the thin thread of balance. He swung the gun toward me. Time slowed. Dante moved first. One step. One shot. The sound was deafening in the small kitchen. The man crumpled. Noah screamed. I was already there, arms open, catching him as Dante kicked the gun aside. Noah's small body hit mine, shaking, breath hiccuping in sobs. "Mommy," he gasped, voice cracked. "I've got you," I whispered, holding him so tight my arms hurt. "I've got you, baby." Dante knelt beside us, checking the man's pulse. "Shoulder wound," he said. "He'll live." He looked at me softer now. "You both will." Mateo appeared at the window, face tight. "Sniper's gone. Van took off west. Plate. Can't read it, but we've got the footage." Dante stood, holstered his weapon, then turned to me. "We're done running from shadows." My heartbeat was still wild, but something steadier started to take its place. I looked around the room, the shattered glass, the sunlight cutting through the dust, and realized this was the moment everything changed. Serrano wasn't just threatening us anymore. He'd crossed into our lives. Noah pressed his face into my shoulder, his breath warm, damp. "Mommy," he said again, quieter this time. "Can we go home now?" Home. The word hurt. Dante answered before I could. "We are," he said. "But not here." He lifted his phone, thumbed a code, voice calm. "Get the jet ready. Immediate wheels up." I blinked. "Jet." His eyes met mine. "You said you didn't trust safe," he said. "So, I'm not offering safe. I'm offering distance." "Where?" "Somewhere Serrano can't reach you," he said. "Where I can start ending this properly." Outside, sirens began to echo again. Too late, as always. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "This doesn't stop until one of us ends it." I wanted to argue, to tell him that violence only made more ghosts. But when I looked down at Noah, alive, trembling, still clutching my shirt, I knew there were no words strong enough to counter what survival demanded. So I nodded. "I'll come," I said. "But on one condition." Dante arched a brow. "Which is?" "You don't shut me out again. I decide what happens to my son and to me." Something changed in his face then, the cold control fracturing just slightly. "Deal," he said. He stepped aside, giving me the space to move first, a silent acknowledgement of trust. I carried Noah out of the apartment. Mateo cleared the hall ahead of us. The sun had climbed higher, turning the wet bricks outside into gold. The city was waking. Dante lingered at the window, looking down at the street below, eyes narrowed, calculating distance, angle, risk. Then he turned back toward me. "You said you wanted truth," he said. "I still do."
"Then you'll get it," he said.
"All of it." He looked past me, toward the horizon where the city bled into morning light. "Because when Serrano made this move," he murmured, "he didn't just start a war." He looked back at me, and something in his eyes was both promise and warning. He ended my silence. The jet's engines whined low and steady, the sound of power held in check. From the window, the city looked small, distant lights flickering through the fog like half-forgotten thoughts. Noah slept strapped into a seat between us, one small hand clutching the edge of my jacket even in dreams. My mother, sedated at last, rested in the cabin's rear under Lydia's quiet watch. Dante sat across from me, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a glass of water untouched on the table. He looked like a man who hadn't blinked since sunrise. The aircraft's interior lights cut soft lines across his face, sculpting him into something between human and legend. I waited until the engines leveled out before speaking. "You said," he ended, "your silence. Start there." He studied me for a long moment, weighing how much truth a person could survive in one sitting. Then he said, "Serrano wasn't a rival. He was family." The word cracked the quiet like a gunshot. "My father's right hand," he continued. "He ran operations when I was still in school. When my brother died, Serrano thought he'd inherit the chair. But my father named me instead. I spent the next 5 years undoing the empire he built in secret. Drugs, extortion, private accounts offshore." His jaw tightened. When I cut him out, I didn't realize how deep his rot went. "He didn't vanish," he metastasized. "And you built the company on the bones of that," I said. He nodded once. I wanted something clean. For the first time in a generation. I looked at him across the narrow aisle. "So, he wants to destroy what you made. He wants to remind me that clean isn't an option." Silence settled again. The hum of the engines filled the space between questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. "Why now?" I asked finally. "Why me?" Dante's gaze softened, a kind of exhaustion replacing the calculation. "Because 5 years ago, Serrano found something he thought he could use. The night you stitched me up." The memory hit like warm blood on cold gloves, the ER lights, the smell of antiseptic, his eyes on mine while monitors screamed. "You mean when you were shot?"
"He ordered it," Dante said.
"Not to kill me. To prove I could bleed. He sent a man to make it look like a mugging. You saved me before his people could finish the story." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "That night, you became his loose end." The cabin seemed to tilt. "He's been watching me since then?" "Not constantly. Just enough to remind me what silence costs." His eyes met mine. "When you vanished after Noah was born, I thought he'd finally let it go. But he was waiting. He needed leverage that looked like innocence." Noah shifted in his sleep, murmuring something about trains. The sound felt too pure for the air between us. "So this isn't about business," I said quietly. "It's personal." "It's both," Dante said. "He wants my name ruined and my bloodline erased. He doesn't care which order." He reached for the glass of water, set it down untouched again. "There's more." "Of course there is." He gave a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The council back home, the old men with gold pens and longer memories, they've tolerated my reforms because the money kept flowing. But if Serrano convinces them I'm unstable, that I hid a child as insurance, they'll strip everything. The company, the name, maybe worse. So what's your plan? Hide us forever?" "No," he said. "I'm done hiding." He pulled a small tablet from his briefcase, turned it toward me. A digital map glowed, a cluster of reds along the waterfront. "Every shipment Serrano runs still moves through these docks. The police can't touch them without proof, but I can. You're going after him. He nodded. And you're going somewhere he can't find you until it's done. I shook my head.
No.
You keep trying to cut me out of my own life. That's not protection, it's control. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture eased, a slow surrender to reason. Then tell me how to do this differently. Together, I said simply. You give me the truth. I give you a way to use it.
He frowned. How?
I'm a nurse. I know how to document trauma, evidence, timelines. If Serrano's built his empire on fear, then we build ours on proof. Everything he's done, every threat, every injury. We turn it into a record that can't be erased. Dante considered that for a long time, then gave a small, reluctant nod. You sound like my father's lawyers. I sound like someone who's tired of bleeding for your secrets. The engines hummed louder as we banked over open water. The city lights dwindled behind us. Mateo appeared from the cockpit, his hair a mess of wind and stress. We're clear, he said. But our tail isn't. Civilian aircraft, no transponder, been shadowing us since takeoff. Altitude match within 30 meters. Dante's voice dropped a note. Serrano doesn't waste time. Want me to shake them? Mateo asked.
No, Dante said.
Let them follow. It's better if they think they know where we're going. Mateo hesitated. And where are we going?
Corsica, Dante said.
My father's first house. It's off every map that matters. Mateo gave a low whistle, bringing ghosts home.
Exactly, Dante said.
He looked back at me then, eyes softer than they had any right to be. It's not much, but it's a start. A place where I can end this my way. Noah stirred again. I reached across the aisle, brushing his curls from his forehead. When I looked up, Dante's hand was already resting on the table, open, waiting, not demanding. I placed my hand over his. The contact was small, quiet.
Real.
For a long while, we just listened to the engines, the steady pulse of distance growing between what we were and whatever waited next. Then Mateo's voice cut through the cabin intercom, rough but steady. Boss, you might want to see this. Dante stood, walked to the cockpit. I followed. Outside, dawn was breaking over the Mediterranean. Behind us, framed by the horizon, the shadow of another jet rode our path, sleek, black, and far too close. Range? Dante asked. 5 miles and closing, Mateo said. No IFF. Military or modified civilian. Whoever's flying it knows our tailwinds. Dante's expression didn't change, but the air in the cabin thickened. He's not supposed to have planes. Then he borrowed one. Mateo said grimly.
Dante turned to me.
Get Noah belted. Tell your mother to stay down. If they try to board, we don't play defense. My heart pounded. What does that mean? It means, he said, voice flat, we make them wish they'd stayed on the ground. Outside, the pursuing jet dropped lower, its wings flashing silver in the dawn. For a brief second, I saw the painted symbol near the cockpit, 3 diagonal slashes. Serrano's mark. The engines roared as Mateo pushed us higher. The horizon tilted. Clouds swallowed the rising sun. I held Noah against me and whispered a prayer I hadn't said since childhood, to any god who still answered mothers. Dante steadied himself on the seat back, eyes locked on the enemy closing through the clouds. Hold on, he said quietly. It's about to get loud. The cabin lights snapped to red. Mateo's voice cracked through the intercom. Calm, clipped, the tone of a man who'd seen the impossible before breakfast. They've locked radar. 2 minutes. Dante was already moving. He hit a switch on the bulkhead and a panel slid open, revealing a narrow compartment lined with mat cases. He tossed one to Mateo, another to me. Oxygen masks, he said. If they fire a warning shot, it'll rupture the pressure seal. My pulse thundered in my ears. Warning shot. They won't risk killing us midair, Dante said. They want proof. They need the boy alive. The jet shuddered as Mateo banked hard left. G-force pinned me against the seat. Noah whimpered, half awake. I pulled the mask over his face, whispered nonsense to keep him calm. Through the cockpit glass, the horizon rolled, sunlight slicing between clouds. The second jet was gaining, sleek, predator smooth. A flash flared under its wing. Flare! Matteo barked. The world went white for half a heartbeat. Then the noise hit a low, concussive thump that rattled bone more than steel. Something pinged off the fuselage. Alarms wailed, and then died under Dante's hand as he cut power to one engine. "We can't outrun them," Matteo said. "I know," Dante replied. "So we don't." He opened another compartment, pulled out a small silver case. Inside, something that looked like a folded insect, black carbon fiber with antennae. He flipped a switch. It hummed to life. "What is that?" I asked. "Insurance," he said. "You gave me the idea." He slid it onto the table. The device projected a live feed, a satellite link mapping both aircraft, their coordinates streaming in real time. Dante keyed a command. "Transmitting," he said. "Straight to every financial regulator in Europe, and the Interpol database Serrano's been paying to ignore him." Matteo grinned despite himself. "You're burning him in the air."
Exactly.
Once they verify the serials, every doc, account, and shipment tied to his name goes red-flagged. The second jet loomed closer, almost alongside now, its cockpit dark. I could see the pilot's visor, unreadable, insect black. Then, over the radio, a voice crackled through static. "Moretti, cut engines. Transmit coordinates. Or we end this here." "Serrano." Dante lifted the mic. His voice was calm ice. "You already ended it, old man. Check your ledgers." There was a pause, long enough for the world to tilt again. Then static and fury filled the line. "You think the world cares about paperwork?" "No," Dante said. "But they care about money. And I just turned yours to smoke." A distant roar built outside. The pursuing jet surged ahead, climbing steeply. Matteo exhaled. "They're breaking off." But the relief lasted one breath. The enemy plane rolled sideways, banking toward us again. "He's going to ram," Matteo shouted. Dante lunged for the cabin door. "Hold tight." The collision never came. Instead, the second jet veered at the last moment, passing so close the turbulence slammed us sideways. I clutched Noah to my chest. Through the window, I saw something small drop from the other craft, a metal capsule tumbling end over end. Then it detonated. A pulse, bright and silent, rippled across the sky. The instruments flickered, then went dark. The hum of power died. Weightlessness swallowed us. Matteo cursed. "EMP burst. We're dead stick." "Glide vector," Dante ordered. "Aim for water. Shallow angle." The world tilted forward. Clouds tore past the windows. The sea surged up, blue and endless. My body forgot how to breathe. "Brace," someone yelled. Impact. The ocean rose to meet us like concrete, then gave, and everything became noise, water, metal, Noah crying, my own heartbeat breaking through it all. When sound returned, we were alive. The cabin was half dark, half flooded with light. Matteo was shouting coordinates into a backup radio. Lydia was already unstrapping my mother, calm despite blood on her sleeve. Dante forced the emergency hatch open, letting seawater sluice through before sealing it back. "Engines dead," Matteo panted, "but the beacon's transmitting." Dante turned to me, soaked, eyes sharp. "You all right?" I nodded, voice gone. He looked at Noah, still clinging to my shirt, frightened but whole, and something inside him cracked just enough for tenderness to slip through.
"Good.
Because now we finish this." He grabbed a flare gun from the wall, loaded it, and shot through the broken hatch. The red trail arced into the dawn, a wound across the sky. Minutes later, the thrum of rotor blades. A helicopter, black, unmarked, hovered overhead. Matteo's men leaned out, ropes already dropping. We climbed. Salt stung my throat, wind ripped at my hair, but the sight of Noah bundled in Lydia's arms above me kept my limbs moving. Hands reached down, pulled us aboard. The sea fell away. Below, Dante's jet bobbed like a toy on the glittering water. The other craft, the one Serrano had sent, was a smear of smoke on the horizon. Transmission confirmed, Mateo said over the roar. Interpol has it. Every file. Every account. They can't unsee it. Dante stared out the open door, wind whipping his shirt against him. Then it's done. I moved beside him, gripping the frame. He'll come after you.
No, Dante said.
He'll run. His world just ended. I watched the sunrise catch the waves below, gold eating the dark. For the first time in weeks, the light felt honest. We flew toward Corsica, toward a coastline still wrapped in mist. The air smelled like salt and something new, possibility, maybe. When the island came into view, Dante finally sat, elbows on knees, eyes on nothing. He looked exhausted, unguarded. I reached for his hand. You kept your promise, I said. He met my gaze. So did you. Noah stirred, half awake, reaching between us with sleepy certainty. Dante caught his small fingers, holding them like a vow. For a long moment, the three of us just breathed. Wind, salt, and heartbeat syncing to the same rhythm. Mateo leaned from the cockpit, grin lopsided. Home stretch, boss. Dante looked out toward the horizon and exhaled, the tension draining from his shoulders like a tide finally turning. Let's land, he said. We've got a family to build. The helicopter banked toward the shore. The sun broke free of the clouds, washing everything in gold. Below us, the sea closed over the wreckage, quiet and complete. And for the first time, silence didn't mean fear. It meant freedom.